All right, percent proportion, lesson 3. You should be on page 122 right now. And let's start to go over a few things as far as, again, what we saw in the video on Thursday from Anywhere Math with Jeff Jacobson and how he was showing percent proportions, how the setup works, and work some of these type of problems out. So first thing I want you to note is at the very beginning, or at the top of this page, it says use the percent proportion and the different types you can come across. So he talked about in his video keywords that you use or that you see to help you set it up. So what we're going to do right now is actually, let me get some colors here, talk about how the setup works. So he talked about the words part, over, whole. So I'm going to use two different colors here. And how that is going to be equal to a percent out of 100, right? Because we talked about that even with percent of a number. Your percents are always out of 100%. So he also talked about a couple keywords as well. When you look at the phrases when these problems are set up, the part has a keyword is with it, and so that's what you look for. And the whole has a keyword of. And so those keywords are to help you find and indicate which is the part in the problem and which is the whole in the problem. So if I come over here back to the top of the different kinds we're going to see and the way that they're going to be worded, I'm going to underline what you're solving for. So for example, when it says find the percent and it says what percent of 5 is 4? What percent is what you're trying to find? And so you'll see in the proportion setup, here's n. We don't know, that's the variable that we don't know that value yet. We don't know the percent out of 100. That's why you see that variable there. So let's keep going. Of 5, so I'm going to use the blue to indicate the whole or the of. So of 5 right here. And I'm going to use the pink to indicate the is. I'm going to change colors, do some color coding. So when I do this, if you want to, if you have different highlighters, that's an option. You could highlight in different colors or colored pencils. You can circle and underline what I'm doing as well. You can mimic what I'm doing and showing you if that helps you with the setup. Is 4 right here. And so you'll see, remember, it's the part over the whole. The is over the of. Is 4 of 5. 4 out of 5. What is that as a percent? Let's look at the next one. Find the part. So I'm going to underline the question there. What number is... So this is what you don't know. You don't know the part. You don't know the numerator. You don't know the is. And so you're going to see in the setup of the proportion, there's where the variable is. That's what you're solving for. Let's see. Of 80%. So I'm going to stick with my black marker here because my percentages I kept in the black color there. So 80%, and so you'll see in the proportion, there's the 80% out of the 100%. Of 5. Of 5. And there's my whole, there's my denominator. What number is, I don't know it, that's my numerator. 80%, my percent out of 100, of 5, the whole. Is over of, part over whole, equals percent over 100. Other example here, find the whole. 4 is 80% of what number? Don't know the of, you don't know the whole. And so you'll see the variable at the bottom here. That's what we're solving for. 4 is, right here, is that numerator. There's my part, 80%. There's my percent out of 100. There's my 80% out of 100. So we're going to stick with this setup. We're going to look for that keyword is to find the part. We're going to look for that keyword of to find the whole. And then we're also going to understand what we're solving for in each of these. So we're going to come down and we're actually going to go right into the got it's here. And we're going to try these first. Now, in this section here, this is going to be us trying to find the percent. So you'll notice like in A and letter B, what percent? Letter B, what percent? So I'm going to underline those right now. We don't know the percent. So if I take and I just actually start to set up my proportions, right? You can get that going first. And knowing you don't know the percent, I'm just going to use X for my variable. And remember, since we don't know the percent, it's X over 100. Because your percentages always go over 100. Now let's talk about the part over the whole, the is over the of. And again, I'm going to stick to this color coding. Remember, I'm using pink for is, blue for of, and the whole. All right, so is 20. There's my part. There's my numerator. Of 25. There's my whole. There's my denominator. I'm going to set this one up as well right now before we start solving. $12.75 is, there's my part, of $50. There's my whole. Okay, so I've got my part over my whole, my is over my of in both of these problems, and it's the percent that we're missing out of each. So one of the things that we're going to look for in this one, which is really nice, it works out well for us, is how much bigger is the denominator in getting in both of these, So I'm going to look at, to help me find X, find that percent, I'm going to look at 25 going to 100. How many times bigger is it getting? Well, it's getting 4 times bigger. So if it's getting 4 times bigger in the denominator, that means in the numerator, the same thing has to happen. That helps me find that X. So it's also going to get 4 times bigger. So 20 times 4 is going to give me 80. Now remember, we're finding a percent. So we just found in letter A that 20 out of 25 is 80% out of 100. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for this next one. So we're going to look at how much larger 50 is getting to 100. Well, it's getting 2 times bigger here. So we're going to do that in the numerator as well. This is also getting 2 times bigger. So you're going to double this amount. So 1275 times 2, or doubling 1275, is going to give you 25.5. And remember, this is a percent. Letter B. $12.75 is 25.5% of $50. Okay, let's try a different setup. So on those two, we had to find the percent out of 100. That's what was missing. So we're going to scroll to the next page or go to the next page, which is going to be page 123. And we're going to look at the got it's letters C and D. Now, here you can see that there are percents in these problems. And so we're not going to be solving for percent anymore. So I'm going to underline what we are solving for. We're looking at the question in letter C. What number is, and then if I look at letter D, is what number? So when I go to set my proportions up, this time the is missing, the part is missing. So I'm going to put X in the numerator because my part out of my whole, my part is missing, what the keyword is. And now I'm going to figure out where all the other pieces go. Now, honestly, when you set your proportions up, you might as well also put in the out of 100 here in the second fraction because those are where your percents will be. And then let's take a look at what we got. So in letter C, what number is 5%? And you know what? I just made a mistake. Hold on. Because I told you guys I was going to color code as much as I could. So my part, the is missing. I'm going to put that in pink. There we go. Let's try this again. So what number is 5%? There's a percent right there. 5%. I put that over 100. 5% of 100 of 60. There's my of. There's my whole that goes under the part in the denominator. What number is? I don't know my part. That's where X is. 5%, 5% out of 100% of 60, my whole, my denominator. Okay, so one of the things that Jeff Jacobs talked about in his video was you could also take a look at the fraction you have and actually simplify it because that should help you solve for your missing value in most cases. So I want you to look at 5 over 100. This simplifies very easily. 5 goes into both of those values. 5 divides into 5 once. 5 divides into 100 20 times. So this 5 out of 100 is the same thing as 1 out of 20. All I did was simplify that fraction because now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at how I can get from 20 to 60. Now I'm going the opposite direction this time, and that's okay. How am I going from 20 to 60? Well, isn't this getting 3 times bigger when I go to the left? From 26 to 60 to the left, it's getting 3 times bigger. So if that's the case, in my numerator, also from 1 to X, this needs to get 3 times bigger. 1 times 3, X is going to equal, my part is going to equal 3. My missing value is my 3. And so I'm going to put in parentheses. Remember, you solve for the part. That's saying 3 out of 60 is 5% out of 100. Okay, let's try this next one. So letter D, 12%, there's my percent, 12% out of 100% of 85, there's my whole, that goes in my denominator. And so I'm going to do the same exact thing that I just did in this previous problem. I'm going to look at the fraction I have and see if I can simplify it. 12 out of 100. For sure. You know what? 4 divides into both of those. So I'm going to divide by 4. Okay, so I'm going to divide by 4. So if I divide by 4, that means 12 divided by 4 is going to give me 3. 100 divided by 4 is going to give me, 25. So I've reduced that fraction to 3 over 25. Now, when I look at going from 25 to 85. Am I going to be able to take that in an even amount of times? No, because 25 is not going to go into 85 evenly. So you could, at this point, on this one, go back to what you learned with chapter 1 on solving proportions. So I'm going to rewrite this. Actually, let me use pink again. X. I'm going to put 85 there. So we can use cross products to solve this. You can always use cross products to solve. So I'm going to do 25 times x and get 25x. And I'm going to do 85 times 3. And if I do 85 times 3, I'm going to get 255. And remember at this point from chapter 1, what we did is we solved for x. So we need to divide by 25 because remember we want this to be 1x equals. I'm going to divide by 25. And if I do, I'm going to get 10.2. And there's my missing part. So x is 10.2. So what that's saying is 10.2 out of 85 is 12%. 10.2 is 12% of that value of 85. So I know I did the cross multiplication here once I had simplified the fraction. You know, you honestly could do it right away. If you don't notice that it's going to get larger by a certain amount or smaller by a certain amount, then you could always go back to, again, what we learned in chapter 1 and do that cross multiplication and solve it. So if you would have left it like the original problem, you would have gotten the same exact answer at 10.2. All right, so we have one other to try. We're going to go back down to the bottom of page 123, and now we're going to solve for finding the whole. So I'm going to again set these proportions up and get them ready to go. And in that second proportion, that second fraction, you know you can fill 100 in there because that's going to be our percent. And then I'm going to take a look in both of those problems and underline what we're solving for. So in letter E, of what number? Letter F, of what number? So that of is the whole that you're missing, and that is the denominator, and that is where I'm going to put those x's. So let's figure everything else out. So letter E, 40%, there's that percentage. So we're going to put that over 100%. 75% in letter F. And then lastly, I'm missing the parts. Well, I'm not missing it, but it's in the problem. I got to get that in there. Is 26. 84 is. And so notice in both of those problems, the is either before the number or after the number, and that's okay. As long as it's next to it on the left or right, that is your part that you are filling in right there. So part over whole, we're missing the whole. We've got our percent over 100. So let's go back to starting to solve and find that missing whole there. So let's take 40 out of 100 and let's simplify this a little bit more. 20 will divide into both of these. And so if I take and do 40 divided by 20, I'm going to get 2. And if I do 100 divided by 20, I'm going to get 5. And so I can see right now in my numerator, remember I'm trying to look at how much larger this is going to get going from the right to the left, from 2 to 26. So if I do that, it's going to get 13 times bigger. 2 times 13 is going to give you that 26. So that means down in the denominator here, I'm going to take that 5 and also multiply it by 13 so that they become equivalent, a proportion. 5 times 13 is going to give me that missing whole there of 65. And so 26 out of 65. 26 is 40% of 65. All right, let's try letter F. So again, I'm also going to take and simplify this fraction, the 75 over 100. So 25 is going to divide into both of these. 25 will go into 75 3 times. 25 will go into 100 4 times. So this simplifies down to 3/4. Now I'm also going to see right now if I can take and get 3 into 84, meaning can I get, how many times bigger is it going to get going from that 3 on the right to 84 on the left? And if I do that, I'm just checking in my calculator right now. Okay, so I'm just doing 84 divided by 3. Yep, it does get larger by a whole number. It gets 28 times bigger. And so if it's getting 28 times bigger from the 3 to the 84, that means right here, going from 4 to my missing whole, I'm also going to make that 28 times bigger. I'm going to do 4 times 28. And I'm going to get 112. So my missing whole, my missing denominator is 112. 84, the part, is 75% of the whole 112. So I'm going to have you right now go to guided practice on the next page, so page 124. I want you to try number 1, number 2, and number 3. You're going to try these 3 right here. And it says, find each number, round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So when you work these problems out, I would always start with getting your proportions set up. Get those lines in. Now remember, a proportion means that these are equivalent. These two fractions are equivalent to each other. So when you set these problems up, what you're doing is you're finding the missing value in one of the fractions to make both fractions proportional and equivalent. So get those proportions set, and then also do what we just did in the lesson. Underline what you're missing in number 1. What percent? You don't know X out of 100. You don't know the percent there. Number 2, what number is? I'm always underlining my question that I don't know. What number is? I don't know the part. Remember, because is the part. Number 3, of what number? I don't know the whole. I'm missing that denominator right there. Okay, and then fill in everything else. Use those colors, if that's what you choose to do, to find the rest of what needs to get plugged into that proportion. Is 9 of $90. Oops, and that's money. Okay, so I'm going to let you go from here. Try these, pause the video, and then come back and check to see if you got your answers correct. Okay, check your answers for 1, 2, and 3. Number 1, you should have gotten X is 10%. Number 2, the part, the numerator, you should have gotten X equals 0.7 or 7/10. And then in number 3, the whole, the denominator there, X is 68.5. Note in number 1 that I was able to reduce this fraction to help me see how much larger it was getting from one fraction to the next. But in 2 and 3, it was a little bit more difficult, so I actually just used cross multiplication that we did in chapter 1 to help me solve for those missing variables. The next thing that you're going to do is independent practice, and you're going to do problems 1 through 6 right now on your own. And then you will check your answers after you do those. Again, keep in mind what I said about getting those proportions set up and filling in what you can. And then you could use the colors to help you fill in your proportion and solve for that missing value. So 1 through 6 is it for today. And again, after you check your answers, you're all set. You should then have some time for Alex at the end. See you tomorrow.